everybody, welcome back to Sorry I Missed This, the show where we talk about all things ADHD and its impact on intimacy, relationships, and communication. And dear listeners, I'm going to let you in on a little bit of a secret. Normally, I record these intros after the show has been recorded so I can kind of gather my thoughts, so I can kind of figure out how I want to introduce the episode. But unfortunately, I don't have much of an intro today because my brain is absolutely melted. I have just gotten done with the most fascinating, the most interesting conversation with our guest today, Lotta Borg Skoglund, who is a doctor and researcher out of Sweden, who is doing, I cannot stress this enough, groundbreaking, life-changing, earth-shattering work about ADHD and hormones in women. This is a topic that I am absolutely fascinated in, and frankly, it's something that we don't talk about enough. And Lotta even names this over and over in the episode, that women are being left out of the research and left out of the conversation, and she and so many others are taking steps to remedy that. And so Lotta took time out of her incredibly busy schedule to talk with us, to bestow a truly unbelievable amount of knowledge about ADHD and hormones and how they impact us as we move through our lifetime. And so honestly, you know what? Without any further ado, let's just start the show because I am so excited for this one. Lotta, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh my God, Cate, thank you so much for having me. I am just overexcited.
So when we say hormones in an ADHD context, which ones are front and center? And why do they matter for things like attention and emotional regulation?
So maybe we should just start with the female menstrual cycle to really break this down, because there are obviously a lot of hormones that can affect ADHD symptoms, right? But when we are talking about female specific sex hormones, then we talk about estrogen and we talk about progesterone. We have these dramatic changes in estrogen and progesterone every month. Take this 28-day menstrual cycle, starting at day 0 or day 1, the first day of your period, basically. Both estrogen and progesterone are really low. And then across the follicular phase, the first 2 weeks basically of the menstrual cycle, estrogen will start increasing. And estrogen is like super fuel for the female brain. So then estrogen will affect and positively affect your ability to pay attention, to regulate your hormones. It has anti-inflammatory properties on your brain and on your body. So many women with ADHD will tell you that across the first 2 weeks, they often, manage their ADHD pretty well. They have their ADHD symptoms under control. Then something really interesting happens, because around ovulation, an ovulation is triggered by this estrogen peak. So when estrogen is at its highest, then this triggers ovulation. And after ovulation, there's a completely different hormonal situation where estrogen level falls back and progesterone levels starts increasing instead. And women with ADHD, they can actually tell you that when estrogen is so extremely high, some women, and especially if you are on ADHD medication, can actually be overexcited. You get too much estrogen, and estrogen and dopamine, they love each other. So estrogen potentiate the dopamine that we know is dysregulated in ADHD. And then when the estrogen falls back and the progesterone starts increasing in the luteal phase, the 2 weeks before your next period, then women with ADHD often report that they again start losing control of their ADHD symptoms. Emotional dysregulation starts, increasing. Rejection sensitivity, that affects your relationships and your self-esteem, and blah blah blah. And then you have this negative cycle that so many women talk about. So there are estrogen and progesterone receptors absolutely all over the brain. So not factoring in hormones when you are actually talking about mental health and in general and ADHD in particular is a huge mistake.
It's really interesting too, because the luteal phase is where we see a lot of those PMDD symptoms that are so common in women with ADHD, right? So the PMS kind of gets turned up to 11, and so that's when we wind up experiencing those really strong symptoms as well.
I call it ADHD deluxe. So that is like, it's like the best of ADHD and then some, right?
One of the things that I'm really interested in is how our bodies change as we move through our lifetime. So I was wondering if you could sort of sketch a picture of how like hormonal milestones like puberty, pregnancy, menopause, perimenopause, how do they tend to amplify, mask, shift ADHD symptoms?
This is absolutely fascinating. And just remember that what I'm talking about as a researcher now is like on a group level. So this is what we know when we, collect data from a lot of women. And when we do that, we can see that the young girls with ADHD before puberty, they tend to have more symptoms from the inattentive part of ADHD. So and we don't know why that is, but we think that there might be many different reasons. We tend to say that girls, they are so mature, they mature earlier than boys, right? And one aspect of being mature is actually knowing what other people expect of you, what adults expect from you. So they, at an earlier age, learn to hold that back, to mask, to find strategies that are so effective, indeed, that we miss them. But when they then move into this part of life where the years around puberty, when the sex hormone starts increasing, we also see that these girls, they turn into young women with more externalizing symptoms. So now they present to us with more hyperactivity and more impulsivity, and also often related to emotional dysregulation. So a lot of emotional hyperactivity, a lot of emotional impulsivity, causing a lot of problems and drama in their lives, right? And they also come and they present with comorbidities. So it's now they come not always saying, I think I may have ADHD, but others say that it seems like you're depressed. It seems like you have a lot of anxiety. I'm worried that my daughter is developing eating disorder or something like that, right? And then these young women, they turn into adult women. And many adult women will then say, as we talked about before, that they experience very severe PMS or even PMDD symptoms every month. And that is taxing on you as a person and on your relationships, right? So this is something that so many women are so ashamed of, that they lose control over their emotional regulation, like regularly in relation to their hormonal fluctuations. And then some of them will get pregnant. And then we had like this massive increase of estrogen and progesterone levels, right? And it's really individual then how you react there, because some women, they get this really super fueled brain by this estrogen, and others, they get really, really like stressed out by hormonal change and the lack of like some homeostasis or like basis, right? And very many women will say that this dramatic fall of hormones postpartum is really, really difficult. And we see that women with ADHD have a really high risk of developing postpartum depression and anxiety like that. And then moving into the part of life, the beautiful part of life where I am right now, like the perimenopause years, it's like a second puberty almost. It's like you almost figured it out, right? Okay, so this is like a pattern here. Every month I have like 3 days where I scream at my kids and my husband, and I ask him to print out the divorce papers because we just need to sign them and file them, because now I cannot take this anymore. And 4 days later it's like, divorce? No. Oh, you're such a drama queen. I was just, So this is like a period again where you get these like dramatic shifts, and it's less predictable than the menstrual cycle. So again, a massive tax on your relationships, on your self-esteem, on your ability to perform at work, right? So and then when you finally enter menopause, and the hormones kind of fade off, many women with ADHD can actually say that after this like really, really difficult period around with a lot of climacteric symptoms, it's really nice to be on the other side finally, and to not have to go through this like fluctuating hormonal shits every month. So this is what the female like lifespan looks like, and you can actually take this like female lifespan and map out the significant hormonal periods, and they perfectly overlap with the risk where women develop mental health problems. So it's not a coincidence. Hormone matters, and we haven't really factored them in, and that's just a waste of really, really important information.
I don't know if it's possible to be like a fangirl of research, but if there were such a thing, I'm a fangirl of your research. And
I'm a fangirl of a lot of so super important. Have you read Lisa Mosconi's work?
Yes.
My God, talking about being a fangirl. It's just like she's opening door after door after door for all of us. I'm just so incredibly grateful for her amazing research there.
I want to talk about your research a little bit.
Okay.
Because you formed the GODDESS ADHD network to tackle what you kind of call this invisible girls problem. So can you just sort of introduce us to your research? What key research questions are you asking? And I guess most importantly, what have you learned so far?
Yeah, so we're just, scratching the surface here. When me and Helena, we were having this lunch, my gynecology friend and one of the goddesses, one of the three goddesses in the goddess group, we had this discussion about why my ADHD girls and adolescent young women seemed to not tolerate hormonal contraceptives, and she said, well, that's they're just imagining, because there's so much research saying that you don't get depressed from the pill. But she did actually admit that many of the girls and women with mental health problems were excluded from these studies. So she said, maybe we should look if these research findings that are, deemed to be true across the world, that hormonal contraceptives does not cause depression or other mood problems. So that's where we started. We started by looking at taking out the women with ADHD from these larger contexts and studying them. And then we saw that on top of an already increased risk of developing depression and anxiety, women with ADHD actually have a 5-fold increased risk of developing depression or needing antidepressive treatment when they are put on the most common hormonal oral hormonal contraceptives that we use in Sweden. So that was the first kind of thing that we experienced, and then we wanted to take that further. Of course, we wanted to see, okay, so what's the consequence of this? Because we have in Sweden, we have almost eliminated teenage pregnancies, and it is again the devil then is in the details, because we have a teenage pregnancy prevalence of about 2%. That's really low. We took out the women with ADHD, and we saw that they're 6 times more likely to become mothers when they are themselves basically only children. So again, we have failed these women. So this kind of just sparked this idea that we have to look into all our previous understanding of female mental health and see, is this really true when it comes to women with ADHD? So we went again and we looked at these women and wanted to know, so are they not detected? Do they fly under the radar, as we say, these invisible girls? And the next study that we did showed that girls and women are diagnosed, they get their ADHD diagnosis approximately 4 years later than boys. So boys get a 4-year head start with treatment and understanding and, this explanatory model and the support that you get in school and in the society and from parents and peers. And the girls, during these extremely transformative years around adolescence, they're just undiagnosed and misunderstood and not invisible, because they do, as we said before, they do present with anxiety, eating disorders, self-harm, depression. They're everywhere. And that's also something that we see in our research, that they consume so much healthcare. They're like moving around like this flipper game in the healthcare system, looking for answer to why their life is so difficult. And we keep, validating them, just like normalizing their behavior, saying, well, honey, everyone thinks that this and this or that is difficult, or everyone gets stressed before the math test, or everyone feels like, their girlfriends doesn't, like them and want them around, and that's just normal. But the truth is, and the research shows, that these girls and these young women, they have an extremely high risk of peer rejection, of, failing in school, underperforming in relation to their potential. So that's really sad that we are they are actually looking for help, and we kind of just dodge that.
It's exactly why I started doing the work that I do, it was that same thing of just being dismissed over and over and being told that I was dramatic or exaggerating, or it wasn't that big of a deal. And, is that, hey, like 2 weeks after my period, my life is destroyed constantly. Like, is there anything I can do? And they would just sort of pat you on the head and say, good luck out there. Yeah. And so I'm just so grateful that there are people in the world like you who are doing this research.
Well, that's overdue, right? It's about the time, because you are not alone. This is such a common experience and testimony that I hear time after time after time, and that's also why we actually named the last study that we did Time After Time, because this is actually what happened. You are looking for answers, you're trying to find them, you're trying to take care of yourself, you're trying to do your best, and you get dismissed and gaslighted, basically. Mm-hmm. And when you don't understand that the hormones, are in play here, you are starting to gaslight yourself as well, because then it's like, but I can do stuff. I function well, so I must just imagining things. Or the problem is that when we don't understand how much the hormones actually influence dopamine levels and ADHD symptoms, you can cause so much harm to yourself and others just, in a couple of hours around, if your ovulation just triggers and overstimulates you, and you get this kind of feeling that you want to do these impulsive things, it just takes a couple of minutes, and then you have to spend the rest of that cycle trying to kind of collect everything and making some kind of order in the mess that you've been part of creating. So many of these women that I meet, they're they have this kind of feeling that they are completely hopeless and completely cannot trust themselves and their own brains. And they can, if they just understand. So the first thing that we do then is kind of map out, can we see a pattern here? And it's when they do that, and when they understand that, Jesus, what they can, then they can start, taking charge of their lives, and starting actually, thinking preventively. So in a couple of days, then this and this and this may happen. And that's just, that's mind blowing for them, and also for us, walking beside them and seeing, the dramatic change that just knowledge can do, right?
Yeah.
It's amazing. Just knowing. It's and then you get so mad. How come no one told them? Why does it have to, why did I have to, be 47 before I understood, how much my hormones actually affected me?
But I'm curious about that idea of mapping. So are there ways that you have found in your research to sort of combat the emotional issues that come with these hormonal shifts that won't exacerbate our ADHD, or we can be kinder to ourselves when we're struggling? Do you have any pro tips for our listeners?
So yeah, not based on research yet, but this is research that we're planning and that we're currently doing. But when you map out and when you understand that hormones actually do affect your ADHD symptoms, and if you use medication, that may be something that you could look at. And we already do that when it comes to SSRIs. You know, we do have this cyclic dosing of SSRIs for PMDD symptoms. So that is something that we're now exploring. So that is one thing that you can discuss with your healthcare professional. But the most important thing, I think, is awareness and is collecting knowledge about yourself. So first of all, if you have a period and if you have like a cycle, then unfortunately we need to take control of that. We need to map out and to understand. And for some women, it's enough to just know, okay, so now I am in these are the danger days. Then I should, maybe not plan a meeting with my son's teacher, or maybe I should, go a little bit easier on my husband, or maybe I should, and maybe I could plan these things or kind of try to time these things where I do have a lot of energy and when I have great ADHD control. So knowing this, we can actually look into the future and be nicer to ourselves. I think that's extremely important as well. So the two most important things then that I work with in my clinic is mapping out the cycle, mapping out your individual ADHD profile and how that may change across the cycle. So knowing that, okay, I tend to get really impulsive, or I tend to get really, psyched. I want to go out, partying, drinking alcohol. I tend to do all these stuff the days around ovulation. That is also the period where I have a lot of energy. Maybe I should kind of focus that energy on something else and not go out drinking, having sex with random dudes and driving really fast in the car or something like that, because that really happens also to a lot of women with ADHD around these days. Not because they think that that's a great idea typically, but because they are so excited about, finally I feel a little bit, I feel something, and I have some energy finally. I need to use this energy because I do know that, and it can be over in an hour or in a day, and then I will be back into this kind of, quicksand again. So that is by far the most powerful tool that I use, and I try to do that with every woman that I meet.
Can you share a little bit about what that looks like? Is that journaling? Is that tracking on an app? Like how do we do this at home to sort of gain awareness of that knowledge?
So we have developed an app where you can actually track that, and you get questions every day to kind of try to map out, and you can enter your cycle so that you are aware, and you can see also how your symptoms and how your function level and how your everyday kind of mood changes, and the goal there is actually to see if you can find the patterns, so you can start developing this your own prevention models basically, and start predicting things in the future, because that is what we need when we have ADHD. We need kind of some kind of prediction for the future to be able to live a healthy life. So that is, but you don't have to use that app. You can use journaling. You can use your Google Calendar. Just write 2-3 words every day. Try to see the pattern, and the more data you get, and the longer that you can collect the data, and then you have to be your own researcher. And I tell the women that I meet that okay, while we are waiting for the research to catch up with us women, we have to be kind of the researchers ourselves.
I want to name this episode Be Your Own Period Scholar with Cate and Lotta. So occasionally I stream on Twitch, and over on the Twitch community, I always tell people when the episodes are coming up. And my community, I have to tell you, is so excited for this episode. It had 1,000 questions. And one of the big ones that my community wanted to know about is how do we track these things if our periods are non-traditional, if we've had a hysterectomy, if we have, hormonal birth control like a Mirena where we're not getting our period all the time. How does that interplay with our ADHD, and what do we do in those scenarios?
So that's a really great question, and that's also something that I had to learn, later in life, to understand the difference between also different contraceptive methods, because there are like traditional combined oral contraceptives where you actually stop ovulating, and then you also stop this fluctuating hormonal cycle. That can be really, really great for some women, and especially if you can tailor the hormones that the pills actually contain to the hormones that you tolerate best. Then you don't have to bother with the fluctuation, and that is actually for many women with ADHD the ideal situation, because then you have the baseline, then you take that factor out, and there are a lot of positive health consequences from being on the pill. And I think that is something that we tend to minimize when we talk about female sexuality and hormonal contraceptive. And if you have a contraceptive, a hormonal combined contraceptive that works, you don't have PMS. So that's actually treatment for PMS or PMDD as well. But not all women tolerate it. And I told you before that our research show that women have an increased risk of also becoming depressed from the pill. And we think that that's not the hormonal factor per se, but rather that you have ADHD, you forget to take the pill, or you take two one day, and so you get even more fluctuations. So that is something that we try to avoid then. So if you're not compliant, then it's better to choose something else. For example, hormonal IUD. That does not typically hinder ovulation. So you will still have fluctuations, but you may not, as you say, you may not have a period. So how do you know? Well, you don't. Then you have to be even more like your own detective, because you may actually have PMS, and you may have these differences in ADHD symptoms related to a cycle that you don't have any other kind of visible sign of.
So I recently switched my IUD, and I could not figure out why there were like these 4 days of the month where I would just weep over my dog, and I was just like crying, and I was like, what? This is so weird. This isn't like me. And it took me an embarrassing amount of time, like as a sex educator and somebody who talks about this for my job. I was like, oh, okay, so my cycle looks different now. It was so funny.
You should not be embarrassed, but the person that prescribed it and did not educate you should be that, because right? Because I think we deserve that. Why should we have to find out these things for ourselves?
So another community question, and something that I hear from women with ADHD a lot, is the interest in that rejection sensitivity, the rejection sensitivity dysphoria. Yeah. How do our hormones impact or connect to RSD?
This is so interesting. And this is also kind of an epiphany when I started talking to Helena, my gynecology wing woman, because when we started, we started comparing different screening tools. So basically different like tables of questions that you ask to find out if someone has ADHD or if someone has PMS or PMDD. The PMDD scale is an ADHD scale. That is, so look at that, the PMDD scale, and see if that is not kind of a PMS rejection sensitivity ADHD scale. That is what's going on, and I think that is also so important to validate for women with ADHD, that again there may be many trajectories into this situation where you are really vulnerable to rejection. Because research tells us that girls and young women with ADHD, they're less liked by their peers and by adults in school, and by healthcare professionals. So that this is such a sad story, that these women, they feel unwanted and unloved, and they feel like they are bothering people, and they're bothering their friends, and people actually think so too. And you wish that you could say that, you're just imagining this, honey, but they're actually right. There a lot of times the ADHD symptoms actually evoke that in other people, and that is so unfair, and it's so sad, but it plays into the rejection sensitivity, because you're so used of getting criticized and getting rejected or not invited. And I think it's important that we validate that, and that it doesn't have to be that way. If you get control of your ADHD symptoms and you get skills to guide you in social situations.
I am absolutely overwhelmed with the amount of wisdom that you have shared with us today. I was like, you answered so many, I had all of these questions and then you just answered them right in your, it was glorious. Oh my God, this is so amazing. So Lotta Borg Skoglund, on behalf of ADHD women everywhere, thank you. Thank you for the work that you are doing. Thank you for the advocacy that you are doing. Thank you for the knowledge that you are bringing to us and the world.
First of all, thank you so much for having me. This has been an absolute pleasure and energy boost to talk to you. I just love to, I could go on for hours. I warn you, be careful what you wish for, because I will be back.
Listen, I'm sitting here literally going all right, we're going to do 17 more episodes with you. So, all right, friend of the podcast, here we go. So yeah, don't worry, you will be back.
Yeah. Can we talk tomorrow?
Yeah. No. Let's talk every day for the rest of our lives. I would like that so much.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. Not an ADHD trait at all.
Anything mentioned in the episode will be linked in the show notes with more resources. Have a question, comment, burning story you'd like to share? Email us at sorryimissedthis@understood.org. This show is brought to you by understood.org. Understood.org is a nonprofit organization dedicated to empowering people with learning and thinking differences like ADHD and dyslexia. If you want to help us continue this work, donate at understood.org/give. Sorry I Missed This is produced and edited by Jessamine Molly and Margie DeSantis. Samaya Adams is our supervising producer. Video is produced by Calvin Knie and edited by Jesse DiMartino. Our theme music was written by Justin D. Wright, who also mixes the show. Brianna Barry is our production director. Neil Drumming is our editorial director. For Understood.org, our executive directors are Laura Key, Scott Koshier, Seth Melnick, and Jordan Davidson. And I'm your host, Cate Osborn. Thank you so much for listening.